Peter Greenberg's live global travel update is presented to you by Air Canada, connecting the world with more than 1,000 daily flights to 180 destinations and 6 continents.
Hi, everybody. Happy early July 4th for our actual weekly global travel update. That siren you hear behind me, I'll explain it. It's the 12 o'clock whistle where I am. Otherwise, at any other time of the day, it's the fire alarm. You may wonder what I'm wearing. I've been a volunteer fireman since I'm 21 years old. I take that back, since I'm 18 years old. And I'm on duty this weekend, as I do many weekends during the summer and in the fall, here in Ocean Bay Park, Fire Island. And there's the whistle. You just heard it. Believe it or not, our fire department celebrates its 75th birthday this year, all volunteer. And a piece of information many of you might know about, 74% of all firefighters in America are volunteer. How about that? So if you really want to serve the community and you can pass the physical, which I'm very happy to say I still do, I hope you guys will consider joining in any capacity you can. Lots of stuff to talk about on this pre-July 4th show. Let's start with what's going on with air travel. What's going on with air travel? It's going to be a huge weekend. It's already started. It actually started last Friday. People are not waiting till today or tomorrow to leave. The real problem, of course, is I hope they don't make the same decision to come back all on Sunday. I hope they're smarter than that. But it's going to be a big weekend, weather notwithstanding. We've seen some storm activity the last couple of days in the Northeast and the Southeast. That will affect traffic across the country. So obviously, don't go to the airport until you find out where your plane is. And the way you can do that is either on Flight Radar 24 or Flight Aware. As long as you have your flight number, it'll tell you where your physical aircraft is and whether or not it's even coming to get you, so you don't get disappointed all the way at the airport. Moving along from that, speaking of air traffic, I have a sort of a somber statistic to report. Of the 313 air traffic control facilities in America, only 2 are at staffing levels that are acceptable. Only 2. Want to know which ones they are? The bustling metropolis of Akron, Ohio, and for reasons I can't explain other than lifestyle, Fort Lauderdale. Everybody else understaffed and either not appropriately staffed or working overtime, even worse. We have a new FAA head coming in. That nomination is in the process. And a lot of people are asking him not to cave in to a lot of lobbying, either by airlines or manufacturers, on safety rules that are already in place. One of which is a group of families who are the families of the victims of Colgan Air Flight 3407, a story that I covered back in February of 2000 and I think it was 2009. That was the commuter flight out of Newark that crashed near Buffalo. And one of the reasons for that is the cockpit crew. They weren't properly trained. They didn't have enough hours. They did something really stupid when there was a stall warning. Instead of pushing the nose down, they pulled up. It created the stall that ended everybody's life. As a result of that, and by the way, Captain Sully Sullenberger's co-pilot, Jeffrey Skiles, was part of that investigation and argued effectively to increase the minimum number of required hours before anybody could sit either in the right seat or the left seat of a commuter flight. And now there's a lot of lobbying going on to reduce those hours. Let's hope they don't succumb to that. Speaking of succumbing to that, a lot of passenger rights, we still don't have a passenger bill of rights, but a lot of passenger rights that were enacted by the last US DOT are now threatened to be scaled back by intense lobbying against the new US DOT. That ranges from compensation under what are considered airline controllable delays, right? Things under the airline's control, and even the way they handle wheelchairs. So we'll be following that as well. All right. You may remember a couple of weeks ago, I told you about this new system that Hertz was putting in, essentially giving returning rental cars an MRI to determine dents, scratches, dings, you name it. Well, without a lot of common sense, Hertz is dinging a lot of renters $440 every time they return the car on stuff they didn't do. What about the MRI before you rent the car? Wouldn't that make more sense? So if you're renting a car from Hertz or any agency that has these new systems, insist they do the MRI before they hand you the keys, not after you return it. Then it's your word against theirs and you lose. All right. Here's a fun little tip. What's in a name? Last year, Oakland, the airport in Oakland, which I happen to love, I like it as a better alternative than San Francisco in many cases. But the airport in Oakland tried to change their name to the San Francisco Bay Oakland International Airport. Well, San Francisco sued and they won. So next week, they're going to do a new vote to see if they can change their name to, see if you can figure out the difference. The Oakland San Francisco Bay International Airport. Oh, well, so much for that. Now, we've been reporting on the new culture, if you will, at Southwest Airlines, what's been changing, going way beyond the check bag rules. They've sort of made intimations they're going to fly internationally on a 737. That's all they fly. They're also making intimations they're going to open lounges. At the same time, a leaked memo shows they may be getting rid of that very coveted companion pass that so many of you use and why so many of you love flying Southwest. So we'll be staying on top of that as well. In cruise ship news, the city of Cannes in France has now banned cruise ships effective next year that are carrying any more than 1,000 passengers. Now, you may remember we reported on a similar attempt to be done up in Sitka, Alaska. That was voted down by the citizens there, obviously an economic issue. But Cannes is a deal now. It's been voted in. As of next year, no big cruise ships can come into the harbor. And if you've seen the harbor in Cannes, it sort of makes sense. But anyway, more on that. We'll see what other communities between now and next summer are going to enact similar rules. All right, little housekeeping note. Earlier this week, actually last week and this week, I participated in a piece of history. We also broadcast our radio show. We taped it there. It'll be coming out next week. But I wanted to show you the takeoff of something you haven't seen in 34 years. That's right. For the first time since 1991, that was a Pan Am jet taking off from Kennedy, heading to Bermuda, Marseille, Lisbon, London, and Shannon. What were they doing? They were recreating and retracing the original Atlantic routes of Pan Am. It was a charter flight. People paid a lot of money to go and to relive part of that history. Next year, they're going to do the same thing on the retracing of the Pacific routes. Now, that was a 757. Pan Am never flew the 757, but they repainted it. They put it on the Pan Am livery, and even the flight attendants and the captains were in Pan Am uniforms. How about that? It's a shot of me and Shannon. I hopped the flight on its last leg home from Shannon, Ireland to JFK. There's the hope in the next 3 years. If they get the proper certification, they will bring the airline back as a scheduled carrier. And those of us old enough to remember how we grew up on Pan Am, my very first jet flight ever at the age of 12 was with my parents from Idlewild, not JFK yet, to Orly, not Charles de Gaulle. So that was a really great experience. You'll hear the whole show a week from this Saturday as we interview all the people who are on the plane who all had a reason to be there. The sons and daughters of Pan Am pilots, retired flight attendants, people who used to work for the airline, people who were good storytellers and were coming from an amazing location in the county of Limerick, the Foynes Museum, where they first launched the Pan Am flying boats, the old Boeings that would be on the river and take off, not just in England, but all through the Pacific and all the way out to Hong Kong. So we'll do that story next week, a little bit more about that, but I wanted to see where I've been the last couple of days. Now, one other piece of housekeeping notes. You may remember we talked about Lunch with Peter. That would be me. All the money going to charity. That's Operation USA. You can always check out their website to see all the work that they're doing. Long-standing nonprofit, actually started by Julie Andrews many, many decades ago. And they've done some incredible work all around the world, things that you can also participate in. opusa.org is their website. We're starting the bidding at $2,500 because the money doesn't come to me, it goes to them. But for that deal, whoever gets the winning bid, it's not just lunch with me. We're going to fly you to wherever I am, where we're doing the show. Obviously, we're going to put you up and we'll have a lovely lunch and talk about anything you want to talk about other than the current state of political affairs, okay? Other than that, everything's fair game. So please remember the bidding stops. It's ended on July 10th. That's coming up a week from tomorrow, excuse me. So get your bids in. We've already had some come in already. And of course, the highest bid gets the deal. And the earliest bid gets the deal if it's the highest bid. So please think about it. Please do it. It all goes to a great cause, and I'll be happy to join you for lunch. And the destination will be fun, wherever that may happen to be. All right, moving along. We have a lot of other stories to talk about, and that is the radio show coming this week. Remember, I was in Shannon, but before that, I was in London. And where is the show coming from this week? The historic, legendary Langham Hotel in London, celebrating its 160th year. Unbelievable history at this hotel. It's literally across the street from the BBC, so you know part of that history was it got bombed in World War II, but then it got rebuilt. So many great stories there. That'll be this Saturday. I'll remind you about that later in our global travel update. But for the moment, let's scroll down and say hello to some folks. There's Jim and Harriet, always numero uno, coming in from Richmond, Virginia. We are going to Boston this weekend to visit family. Are there any hidden gems that we might have missed when we lived there? Well, of course there are, but I need you to be more specific. Boston or anywhere else around Boston. Newton, Brookline, we'll try to help out. Linda says, hi from Naples, going to Miami and Rome, November 24th to December 7th. Best time to book airfare. Well, here's the interesting thing, and this really pertains to everything that's going on right now in airfares. All those algorithms that the airlines use to project demand and set prices, they're out the window because of tariffs and trade wars, an uncertain economy, Americans deciding they might want to stay home this summer. All that has taken all those projections and thrown them out. So what this means is the original idea was like 54 days out. In that window, you want to book an international fare, unless it's Christmas or Thanksgiving or something like that. Right now, you lose nothing by at least looking online. But keep in mind, the airlines have not properly adjusted their systems yet because things are too fluid. So November is still 4 months from now. So I would wait till at least July 15th or July 30th. But you can look now. Again, remember, if you book a fare on a U.S. carrier and then all of a sudden that fare drops, you can cancel that fare, get a credit, go back in and book it again for the lower fare and get a credit on the difference. So you lose nothing for browsing right now. Okay? Priya's saying hello. Hope you're doing well. Watching from sunny and beautiful Chicago. All right, Priya. Matthew's saying greetings from Syracuse. Sue saying hi from Bellingham, as she always does. Patrick is actually in Los Angeles. Unusual for him. All right, moving on. Mike is saying cloudy 82 degrees in Fort Lauderdale. Gene is saying greetings from Tulsa. Robin is in Williamsburg, Virginia. And Tayo is saying, yikes, only 2 out of over 300 facilities. Yeah, yikes again. And some of these facilities are below the 85% staffing threshold. You know what that means? They're absolutely forced to work mandatory overtime in the one job you should never work overtime in. All right, Gary's saying hi from New Jersey after a weekend in Virginia. Camilla's saying hi from Tucson. Okay. Here we go. Our good pal Ray Bixson. Happy July 4th weekend on Fire Island. Stay away from exploding fireworks barges this year. A reference to something we had nothing to do with, but about 3 years ago, they always do the fireworks display very close to where I am right now on the bay, on the Great South Bay. And they had a problem with one of the barges 3 years ago. When they lit the fireworks, they didn't go up, they went sideways and the whole barge went up. Luckily, nobody got seriously injured, but people were jumping into the water. Colleen's saying, she loves my firefighter uniform. Well, yep, that's what it is. Scott's saying, hi, my friend. Do you think the backlash against Carnival Cruise Lines will fade? Well, be a little more specific, Scott. What's the backlash for? Tell me about that. Donna's saying, oh. Donna says probably not happened before. What's happened before? Tell me more. Scott saying hello from a cozy cubicle in downtown Chicago. All right, Scott. Robin says, with your love for flying, do you have a license to fly? I do not. I am not a licensed captain. I'm not a licensed pilot. I do train numerous times in the airline simulators every year because I want to stay current in systems and techniques. It allows me to understand what I have to do to explain everything to you, but I would not be so presumptuous to tell you I'm a licensed captain because I'm not. But it also allows you to have conversations with airline captains around the world and aviation experts where at least I know a little bit about what I'm talking about, and I can learn from them and then share all that information with you. All right. Hi, Donna saying hi from Maryland. Evelyn saying hello from Syracuse. Question, your thoughts on buying a seat on flights? Well, can you be any more specific? But let me help you a little bit. With the airlines these days, it's all about the upsell, right? I mean, and they determine a more coveted seat as being closer to the front of the plane. And on some flights, you know what that means? You can still smell the chocolate chip cookies, but you can't have one. But forgetting that, why would you pay more for a middle seat? Ridiculous. Here's the thing. Airline seating charts lie because airlines hold back between 20 to 30% of their seats for their frequent flyer mega milers, right? So it's a better idea, unless it's a very big holiday weekend like we're about to have, to take your chances and get out to the airport early and check in there if you want a window or an aisle seat. Now, what some people do, and by the way, I'm one of them when I fly with my wife, I book the window and the aisle seat, hoping that nobody gets the middle seat. And if somebody does get the middle seat, then either I or my wife will offer to switch with them so we get to still sit together. All right. Randy's saying, Lower Peninsula of Michigan. Okay. Donna's saying Pan Am. Yeah, Donna, Pan Am. You can't beat the experience. Remember that song? Bottom line is they're not scheduled yet. They're still flying charter, but it was a wonderful thing to see that plane and to bring back those memories. Okay. Riz is saying, are there rechargeable items that can commonly not be taken on a flight? Flying an Alaskan Air from West Coast to East Coast in a couple of weeks. Well, they don't want you to put any lithium-ion batteries in your checked bags. That's a no-no, right? But I commonly put my chargers and my battery packs in my carry-on bag. Now, some airlines have gone one step beyond that, and they say if you're going to do it, it has to be visible during the flight. They don't want fires being started in carry-on bags in overhead compartments or under seats in front of you, and that's a fair requirement. But no, you're not being told you can't bring them. You're being told you can't check them. All right. Colleen's first flight as a toddler was on Pan Am. There you go. And there's more information, by the way, on Lunch with Peter right there on our chat box. Please check it out. Our good friend Mutatina is watching from Uganda, and Wendy's in New Jersey. Tyler's saying, premium travel credit cards like Chase Sapphire Reserve and Amex Platinum increase the annual fee and are becoming coupon books instead of travel cards. Any point in these cards now? Well, you're right. They're bumping those fees. The Chase Sapphire Reserve, which is a card I happen to like, is going to $795 a year. For what? Now, some of it makes sense. They're going to give you a $300 travel credit. They're going to give you some dining credits. But you need to go through this thoroughly to see if you're ever going to use it. Because if not, what's the point? Right? The only other reason why I like the Chase Sapphire or even Capital One Venture or even some other cards, even like Discover, that's a cash back, but is because you're not affiliated with any one airline mileage program, which means you're chasing miles you'll never be able to redeem, whereas the points that you get on Chase and Capital One will actually buy you a bona fide paid ticket that you know you're going to get. But then again, that $795 fee for an annual deal may cross a threshold for a lot of you. Go into the deal, find out. For new card holders, it's effective, I think, now. For existing card holders, when you renew, it goes into effect in October. So bottom line, read the fine print. Get out your adding machine and figure out, does it add up, right? Does it include things you're actually going to need or use? And if it doesn't, you might want to rethink it. Okay. Oscar from LA. I was on a return flight from Tokyo to Vietnam after a 7-day R&R, and our flight was on a Pan Am 707. And as we were halfway down the runway, the plane blew an outboard engine. Needless to say, we spent 3 additional days in Japan while Pan Am replaced the engine. Well, I hope you had fun in Japan. You know, that reminds me of a story that happened to me. There's an island in the Pacific. It's pivotal. It was the site of the largest Navy victory in the history of warfare, the Battle of Midway. And the Navy was there for years. It was a strategic base for us. They launched all their spy planes from there. There was a sub base there. I mean, they did a lot of stuff there. But they decided in the 1990s, you know what? We don't need it anymore. And they left. And at one point, there were like 6,000 or 7,000 people on that island. And they just left the base the way it was, turned it over to, I think, to the National Park Service, or no, it was Fish and Wildlife. They turned it over to Fish and Wildlife, and they restricted the island as part of the deal. Only 100 people could ever be on that island as visitors at any one time. They attempted to launch tourism there. It wasn't sustainable. Now, if you go there, it's mostly Fish and Wildlife people. But I went to check it out. And the runway there was one of the longest runways you'll ever know, because the military had to do that for the B-52s and the C-5A cargo planes, etc. And it was in Boeing's best interest. Boeing was spending, and still is, over $1 million a year to keep that airport open and fully staffed 24 hours a day. Why? Because in order to get their twin-engine jumbos certified for extreme overwater distance, they had to have an alternate airport that was available. That's Midway. It's also an alternate airport if a plane's having a problem. And while we were there, I believe it was United Airlines 747 blew an engine crossing the Pacific. They had to make an emergency landing at Midway. They did. And all the passengers were there having an unplanned 7-day vacation, the best time of their life, waiting for another engine to be flown in and the mechanics to fix it. So those stories don't happen very often, as you saw it happen to you back in, I assume, the 60s or early 70s on Pan Am. All right, Wendy says, feeling lucky I booked Newark to Chicago for the end of August, $300 round trip. Other fares much higher. Well, when in the end of August? Remember, Labor Day comes a little early in September this year. That may be the reason why. Okay. Raymond's spending July 4th with his new grandson, Felix, on the Jersey Shore, getting an indoctrination early. All right. Juan is saying, my first flight, to JFK and Pan Am as a 16-year-old kid, 1972. All right. By the way, my first flight from Idlewild to Orly on Pan Am 707, my mom dressed me up. You know that, jacket and tie. I was so nervous as we came in and circled over France, I threw up. That was the first and last time I ever threw up on a plane, but I admit it. Okay. Christina says, hi from Merida in the Yucatan. Scott saying, changes to their long time. Oh, yep. You're talking about Southwest, I'm sure. Donna saying, the child that fell overboard on Carnival and the father jumped to save her. Okay. Here's the thing. We're still investigating that story. In fact, I talked about it earlier this morning on CBS. The kid who fell over and the father were both very lucky that they both survived. However, let's discuss this. Cruise ships are not floating daycare centers. Parents need to be responsible. You can't just let your kids run free. I don't know exactly what happened, but obviously that kid was not being supervised when they fell over, or they were not being held. I understand why the father did that. We're going to have more on that next week when I join you for GTU, otherwise known as Global Travel Update. But you may remember the story that happened on Royal Caribbean a number of years ago, where a grandfather was on the deck while the ship was in port, and he had his grandson on the rail, and he let go of his grip, and the kid fell to his death. The family sued Royal Caribbean for negligence. They lost that suit. Nobody should ever put a kid on a railing. You as an adult passenger should never put yourself on a railing. Anyway, we'll talk about that more when I have more information, but we will follow up on that story. Juan says, I said that was it. That was Juan's flight. Mike says, I turn a profit on both reserve and platinum. Well, then keep the cards. Keep the cards. All right. How about hidden gems in Cape Cod? Something off the beaten path. You know what? We'll investigate that. As you know, we have 3 different shows that are on the air right now. Thank you for Jim and Harriet there. One is called The Royal Tour with heads of state. As you know, I go to individual sitting heads of state, kings, presidents, prime ministers, and occasional sheikh, and I get them to give me the impossible. 8 days of their schedule, unencumbered, devoted only to me. And then for the next 8 days, they become my personal tour guide to and from and within their countries. They have no right of editorial control. Whatever happens, happens. Think 2 guys on a road trip or 2 people on a road trip, and whatever happens, happens. That's also our other show, which came from that, called Hidden, and which is a 1-hour show where I take you to the most extraordinary experiences in a destination that most people don't know about. But the key is they're all accessible to you. And by the way, our new show, we just finished it. Hidden Malta will be premiering in October. Hidden Alabama is being premiered later this summer as well. Hidden Hong Kong, Hidden Egypt. These are all 1-hour specials. If you go to Amazon Prime or check your local listings for PBS or Apple TV Plus, and you just punch in either my name or the word Hidden, you'll see all the shows. But thank you, Jim and Harriet. I'll check out Cape Cod and see if there's anything we can do. All right, hold on one second here. I'm going to scroll back up, see if I missed anybody. In the meantime, a couple of other things. Let me get to them right now. Which state eats the most pizza? That's our trivia question for the day. Which state in the United States eats the most pizza? All right. By the way, pizza is the favorite food of 21% of Americans. Bet you didn't know that. And the latest research looked at the number of pizzerias per 100,000 residents. And who eats the most? It might surprise you. It's not New York. It's not LA. And for you deep dish fans, it's not Chicago. It's the state of New Hampshire. Go figure. All right. All right, let's go to some other emails here from Matthew. Much appreciated to the TSA staff at Detroit, who were all professional, helpful, courteous, friendly, and patient with my travel party. I like to hear that. You know, same thing for customs and immigration. I came back on an international flight to Chicago, and I got to customs, and the woman said to me, "Welcome back." I said, "I'll marry you." They were nice. It's okay to be nice. They can still do their job and be nice. All right. Bill says, we're about ready for our trip to Reno from Stockton, California for the balloon race. Reno is famous for this free event. Have you thought of a storyline on balloon races? Well, we've done balloon race stories, not just to mention the balloon race in Reno, but the airplane races. Unbelievable races in Reno. I mean, around the pylons. You got to check it out. But you know what's coming up this month? My favorite of all favorites, the EAA Flyin in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. For a period of 5 days, the actual tower at the Oshkosh airport, and that airport itself is the busiest airport in the world. Takeoffs and landings every 30 seconds of every airplane you can imagine flown in to be displayed and demonstrated. If you've never been, even if you're not an aviation buff, you just got to sit there and take it all in. You won't believe it. Check it out. The EAA Flyin in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, every July. It's coming up. All right. Here's one from Oscar. Going to Tokyo for 6 days prior to a cruise. What are your best guides for sightseeing? Well, it all depends on what you want to do. But I'll tell you one thing I do before I ever go to Tokyo. I do 2 things. One is go to the supermarket, get 2 little jars or little plastic jars of toothpicks. Why would you do that? Because when you get to Tokyo, you're going to go to the Mitsukoshi or the Daimaru stores, the beautiful food markets. where they have food displays that make Harrods in London look like nothing. And they have all this food on display for you to sample, but nothing to sample it with. Hence the toothpicks. I did a story a couple of years ago called Japan on a Toothpick. And boy, was it great. And you're not doing anything wrong or culturally insensitive. Just bring a toothpick. Second thing I do, although they've moved it, is you got to go to the Tsukiji market. That's the fish market in Tokyo. Got to get up early. Get there no later than 3:30 in the morning. I'm not kidding. The auction starts. Whatever you do not raise your hand, because that means you will have bought a $30,000 tuna. But watch what happens. And the most amazing thing about this market, there's no fish smell at all. It's clean. It's beautiful. You're going to see different species that you've never seen before in your life. And the coolest thing, I know you're going to go, really? Is when the auction's over about 5:15 in the morning, you walk about a block away, and there are all these sushi bars that are open. And you can imagine how fresh the fish is. I know the idea of sushi at 5:30 in the morning may not be appealing until you do it in Tokyo. All right, here's one from Lena. Traveling through Chicago O'Hare soon. Any tips for navigating the airport efficiently during peak hours? Also, any hidden gems for food inside the terminal? All right. Laugh at me if you want, Chicagoans. And my wife does not allow me to go to O'Hare unescorted for one reason. I always stop at Garrett's. Guys who fly through Chicago, guys who live in Chicago, know Garrett's. The best popcorn ever. And you order the Chicago mix. And you get a big bag. It's a combination of cheese and caramel popcorn. The best. And of course, the reason why you bring a big bag is because once you get on the airplane, if you're stupid enough to open the bag, you will be sharing it with every other passenger on the plane. It's inescapable. All right. Chicago is not the easiest terminal to navigate. They do have a train, as you know, but the bottom line is you'll be getting your steps in. All right. Where are we? Oh, Michelle, we're taking our teenagers to Paris this fall. Any suggestions for engaging off the beaten path activities that aren't just museums? Absolutely. Look, there's a way to see the Seine, and it doesn't have to just be on a bateau mouche. There are ways to get into Notre Dame where you want to stand in line. I know you want to go see the Louvre, and you're going to come out of it saying, it's so small. Okay, you want to see the Mona Lisa, fine, although they're moving the Mona Lisa to a different room. But there's so many other museums you want to see other than that. I know you said no museums, but I have to recommend the Musée d'Orsay, former train station, the light in there, the natural light. It's the best way to see art. Check that out. I know you have to go to the Louvre. I know it's mandatory, but go to Musée d'Orsay. And then you haven't mentioned food. I'll give you two places that I live at when I'm there. One, very old school brasserie. It's on the way to Musée d'Orsay, by the way. It's called Brasserie Lip. The waiters are, I think, 105 years old. They have a really bad attitude, but you go there for that. It's entertaining. It's where all the locals eat, very few tourists. And whatever you want, you'll be sitting there next to two other people. I mean, the seating is not spacious, but it's, remember Woody Allen's movie Midnight in Paris? Well, think about that when you have Brasserie Lip food. And the other place to go that nobody knows about, and you need a reservation, it's not high end, it's just local, and there are only maybe 12 tables in the whole restaurant. It's not far from the Champs-Élysées. It's on a street called General Lanrezac, and it's called what's it called? Oh, Lahide. Lahide, spelled Hide. It's an Asian French chef. It's Asian French fusion cooking. Everything on that menu is amazing. And but get a reservation. You'll be crunched in as well. But boy, are you going to be happy with that. Okay, here we go. Tom says, I have a long layover in Istanbul. Is it worth trying to leave the airport for a quick adventure? And if so, what would you do? What's your definition of a long layover? If it's 12 hours or more, yeah, leave the airport. But it's going to take you an hour to get into town and an hour to get back because the airport is not where the old airport used to be. It's further out. However, email me again, peter@petergreenberg.com, if it's longer than 12 hours, and I'll give you specific guides to what you can do in that, let's say, 9 or 10 hour window. Okay. It's time to do photo of the week. And before I explain this to you, every time we do photo of the week, I explain, I love when people wait for the light. That's one of the beauties of photography. Check this shot out. Did they wait for the light? The winner, Gretchen Heffler, who says, I just returned in May from a great first tour of Japan. She names all the places she was in terms of, there's Osaka, Kyoto, Kobe, Hiroshima, and Hakone. She said, we had the clearest sky looking across the lake. We had been warned that very few ever see Mount Fuji in its glory. Clouds are usually the reason. I took the photo after dinner when we were learning how to paint the Japanese alphabet. That'll come in handy. Our group kept leaving the room to take sunset photos of Mount Fuji as the colors kept changing. This is the best photograph of my tour. There you go. I have to tell you, I haven't seen Mount Fuji taken like this in a long time. Congratulations to Gretchen. And if you think you've got a photo that qualifies as photo of the week, you know what to do. Photo contest at petergreenberg.com. And if we think it works well, it goes right up there next to Gretchen's. Okay, a couple other little notes I want to give you about what's going to happen after the July 4th weekend. And that is, expect to see people pulling back on their travel. We're already seeing it now. And we're not talking about foreign visitors to the U.S. I'm talking about just U.S. travelers going anywhere. According to our friends at Longwoods, they do all the great research. Listen to this. More Americans plan to cut back on travel spending. Retail, down 37%. Entertainment and recreation, down 32%. Food and beverage, down 28%. Lodging, hoteliers, pay attention, 22%. And 29% are choosing destinations much closer to home. That's why everybody's in their car this weekend, right? Gas prices haven't spiked. That may explain a lot. So when you think about what's going on, get ready for a possible buyer's market, not just internationally, but a little bit here domestically. If you're going to some of the usual suspects that are not. I'm not talking about Yosemite. I'm not talking about Yellowstone. I'm not talking about, Los Angeles. I'm not talking about San Francisco. There are 48 continental U.S. states. Get creative. I'm talking Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin. I'm talking about Indiana, Nebraska. You know what? They're great in the summer, literally. And you know what? They won't be full. So check them out. All right. One more housekeeping note, of course. Lunch with Peter. Get your bids in. That's lunch with, and I think we have it on the website as to how you make that bid. I think it's called Lunch with Peter at petergreenberg.com. Again, all of it goes to a great cause. You can check out their website, a great nonprofit, Operation USA. Their website is opusa.org. Of course, our show this weekend, coming from the legendary historic Langham Hotel in London on the West End, 160 years young, with unbelievable history and stories that we'll share with you, not to mention something we've mentioned on the show before. Right around the corner from the Langham is one of my favorite little bars. It's called the Wigmore. And no, I'm not going there for a pint. I'm not a drinker. I'm going there for something else. They have perfected, in my book, the best grilled cheese sandwich in the planet. And you'll see why. And by the way, it's this big. I'm not exaggerating. It's not like I caught a fish. It's really this big. And you look at it and go, I cannot finish this. Guess what? You finish it, but be prepared for a nap. Anyway, check out our show this weekend, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern time. Check your local listings. If you can't find the show, that's easy. We stream it live, petergreenberg.com. Hit the radio button, and you'll hear the show. Again, I'm going back to work at the firehouse. That's my job. Remember what I said before, 74% of all firefighters in America are volunteer. There's no reason why you can't do it too. In any different way and capacity you can. Let's hope for a quiet, uneventful weekend, but let's celebrate our independence, watch the fireworks, and everybody be safe. I'll see you next week from another location somewhere around the world.